Welcome back. I'm Pastor Luis, and I'm here with one of the members of Central Christian Church, Steve Martz. And we're going to continue on our conversation about Central's journey in becoming open and affirming. Steve has been a part of the Central community for quite some time and was here during that transition. And we really just want to hear about your experiences, things that stood out to you at that particular time. Before today, you and I were talking about some of the precursors, the things that happened that stood out to you. Do you mind just talking a little bit about your experience about GLAD and how that opened up kind of the movement for you to be here at Central, and then watching how this journey of opening, affirming, occurred?
Well, I joined Central in January 1993, but before that I heard about Central back in the late 80s. I had a friend who attended Central and was telling me a lot of the good things were happening with, at the time it was Van Knight who was the minister. And so I had visited a few times, and then in '89 we had our General Assembly for the disciples here in Indianapolis. My friend had told me about this new group that was forming called GLAD, Gay, Lesbian, Affirming Disciples. And so he encouraged me to kind of find out more about them, and just so happened that GLAD was allowed to have table space at the assembly. Well, Central, I found out, was hosting the pre-assembly event for GLAD in this very room. And I thought, well, it's kind of neat that a disciples church would host a group like this. And I found out later that Central was the very first disciples church that allowed GLAD to use their space for a meeting. That gave me a good kind of intro to Central and what it stood for. And Barbara Blaisdell started in, I think, '89, and then I joined in '93, and so that's how things got started. The O&A movement actually started from this GLAD group. One of the first committee members was Alan Harris, and he felt a need to have create this movement of open and affirming congregations, so that there'd be kind of a body of churches that could support each other and support their members. From that, then after the '89 assembly, then the GLAD council at that time, that included Alan Harris and some other people who are members here now, started having their general meetings here right after that assembly. So I got to meet them and kind of get to know the group a little better.
And so the process didn't happen overnight, right?
No.
It took some time.
Right.
What were some of the challenges that you saw the church, have in that process?
The big recognition issue was, just society in general at that time, or just the beginning issue process of the AIDS epidemic. A lot of people, including churches, wouldn't even do funerals for people who had died of AIDS. And Barbara Blaisdell had been asked by somebody who wasn't a member, I don't think they were a member, if Central could have a funeral host the funeral for a person with AIDS who had died of AIDS, and she gladly accepted and let them hold the funeral. And so I mean, at the time, I'm sure there were people in our congregation, this congregation, that had questions or really were fearful, but I don't think there are that many issues with the congregational board, because I think has been the history of Central all along. But actually starting the process of open and affirming took some time. I think a lot of people who weren't members at Central were always assumed that Central was open and affirming because we did have a pretty active group of newer members, especially, who kind of started taking leadership, or at least participating in the organization of the church, like the board and deacons and elders. So, but the sticking factor was actually saying that we were ONA. Some advocates of being open and affirming say they'll just have a vote, yes or no, but a lot of times that broke a lot of churches apart because it was brought down to either a yes or no vote. And so the consensus was we need to have a study. I think that's why Alan had the Open and Affirming, created the Open and Affirming, because he created study books and other resources for churches to look at and study. And I don't know if it's with every church. Basically, the whole congregation goes through the study, and then by consensus, the board votes to. Pretty much a done process by the time it gets to the board.
By the time it gets to the board. So what I hear from you is that, during that time, of course, the AIDS pandemic was something people did not have a lot of knowledge around. There was a fear of that particular community, right, and humanizing them in this particular experience. Right. But Central seemed to open up its doors to that, which led to some conversations, which led to people coming here. And it sounds as if the church was behaving in a way, but the next step was just to make, a statement. That process seemed to work better in doing a communal connection to it, right, as opposed to just saying yes or no and then move on.
Yeah, and then, I think before I even joined, I noticed Central was having ads on the sides of buses, inviting people to join, visit Central, and Barbara Blaisdell actually preached at some of the Pride church services.
Nice.
And so that really impressed me, and probably a lot of people, that she was willing to just go be out there and not be so concerned about what people thought. So,
what was your experience of Central itself? Because you said you joined in '93. Did you feel accepted? Did you feel staying at Central? What made you continue to stay at Central in that sense? What was the environment for you?
There were several of the older members who would routinely, if there was a newer, somebody they didn't know come through the doors, they would welcome right away, invite them to sit down with them at the church service, and just really kind of make them feel welcome. They didn't ask who they were or where they came from, but just accept them immediately. So that was the main factor. And like I said, it's the whole congregation at that time, which was pretty small, was very welcoming, and no matter who you were. So.
It's been some time since the Open and Affirming statement. What do you think are some possible ways that we as a church can move forward in still being and advocating for the LGBTQ plus community?
I've always felt that I've been a volunteer for the GLAD Alliance, now LGBTQ Alliance, since really for 25 or 30 years, and I've always, and I knew now that there was some some ONA churches that over the years have reversed their decision and became, I guess, non-ONA. And a lot of that, I believe, has to do with just it could be change of a minister, change of board members. So my feeling is that no matter what the church, if they decide to become ONA, it's just like anything, any decision or commitment, whether you're married or anything, you have to keep renewing those vows, so to speak.
I like that.
And just relook at the conversation, look at what you committed to. You can't just put whatever was signed at the time. I think ours was September 2008, and just put it in a drawer and forget it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to proclaim it, just like we do for communion and other traditions of disciples. You have to renew and revive it and make changes if you have to. So we're in the process of creating a poster, a plaque of some kind, so that we can put at the entryway or somewhere in our church, just stating the fact that we are an O&A church as of September of 2008. So
yeah, in the sense, what I hear is like, how do we market in a place that's not just in the hearts of the members of the church, but visible for those who don't know when they walk in and come to Central, that they know that we're an open and affirming congregation and there to be advocates and to help. So
we're having our Pride Festival this weekend, and we're going to have a booth. We're going to be part of the parade. That's great. But the main thing is to be visible throughout the year on our website, from the pulpit, from the members, and display within our church and outside the church who we are. So
being open and affirming isn't a one day a year kind of thing, right?
Just like I said, any kind of commitment, including marriage or friendship, it's a work in process.
Well, Steve, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your experience and what you've contributed to the church and being an advocate and volunteering for so many years with GLAD and all that you do for Central Christian Church. So thank you so much for your time today.
Okay, thank you.